This is a story time, and it's probably gonna be a long story time, but hopefully, I can get it all in one video, and I don't have to re-record it like I've been having to do other videos. But this is a story time about the time I inadvertently, accidentally joined the cult, and yeah. So this is how it's gonna go. So when I was about 17, I had met this guy, which I was actually introduced to him through his cousin and my then best friend at the time, which tried to hook me up with his cousin. For the sake of the video, I'm gonna call the guy Randall. Okay, and so when I was 17, I hooked up with Randall. I reconnected with him because I had just got my driver's license and I was just on the road. You know, I had borrowed my father's car and I really wanted somewhere to go. So I had dated his cousin for like, I don't know, a few months to a year, a couple of years earlier when I was like 15. I was 15, I'm 45 now, judge a man, I don't care. So when I got my license, I called his cousin. I just called him JL. I called JL to see like, hey, what are you doing? Because I hadn't seen him in a while, and I really wanted to drive somewhere. So I had contacted him, expecting him to pick up. But Randall answered the phone. And I said, hey, where's JL? He said, well, JL is locked up. And I was like, what? He said, yeah. He told me the story, and I was like, dang, I got my license, and I really wanted to go somewhere. So I was just trying to see what he was doing. So he was like, well, he in jail, but I need to go get a haircut. So if you can come take me to get a haircut, I'll hang out with you. So I was like, all right, cool. So I go pick him up, take him to get a haircut. We having a really good conversation. I waited for him to get his haircut. And after he got his haircut, we just really started talking. And he was like, you should have been my girl. And I don't like how he treated you and all of this stuff and, all, so on and so forth. So I was like, yeah, but it is what it is. And he was like, well, you want to hang out with me? So we started hanging out. And ever since then, we had just been together. We just never left each other's side. And even though his cousin JL was still locked up, um, he was just like, well, I want to be with you. And I was like, well, I used to date your cousin. He was like, I don't care. I want to be with you. So I was like, all right. So we ended up being in a relationship. So we were together for about 3 years. And he had asked me to marry him. And I told him, I said, yeah, I'll marry you, but I want to meet your family first. Because up until like the first 3 years of our relationship, he never talked about his family and I never brought it up. All I knew is that he was estranged. He hadn't seen him in about 5 years. So, but before we had got married, I was like, I really want to meet your family. I knew that he had a younger sister and two younger brothers, and his mom and his stepfather, which he called his father. But at the time that I met him, he was living with his maternal grandmother and his JL. So 3 years into the relationship, he asked me to marry him, and I was like, yeah, I'll marry you. Got to meet your family. So he said, fine, we'll go meet him on Father's Day because they have a church out in Stone Mountain. And I said, oh, okay. It was right around the corner from where my father lived. I was very familiar with the area. So he was like, we can go then. So we make arrangements to go to his stepfather's church on Father's Day. So we go to stepfather's church on Father's Day, and everyone's just excited to see him because he's the prodigal son, and he had just came back. The prodigal son had just came back. So everybody was excited to see him. We came in service late, so we didn't get a formal introduction until after service. So after service, everybody was, all excited to see him and, giving him hugs and all the other stuff. It wasn't a big church. It was actually like maybe like 25, 30 people max in a small little storefront office that they turned into a church. So after the service, the father had invited us over to their house for dinner. So we leave the church, go over to the house, and they live in this really nice neighborhood. And I was driving my mom's old beat up Nissan station wagon, which I didn't care because I was like, I ain't walking. But we go, and they was like, well, don't park in the driveway, park on the side of the street because we don't want to block anybody in. And actually they were just embarrassed about my car. But I was like, all right, cool, whatever. So I park on the side of the street. We go in, we have dinner. Everything was all fine and good. They were really, really nice to me. Like, what do you do? Where are you from? Like, those types of questions. The siblings were really, really nice. Whatever. So they invited me to come back to church again. And I was like, all right, cool, whatever. So I park on the side of the street. We go in, we have dinner. Everything was all fine and good. They were really, really nice to me. Like, what do you do? Like, where are you from? Like, those types of questions. The siblings were really, really nice. Whatever. So they invited me to come back to church again. And like I went back a couple of times. My ex went, Randall went a couple of times, and everything was fine. Over maybe like a month or so, Randall just stopped going. So when Randall stopped going, I stopped going because we weren't living together, but I was over there pretty much all the time. So I had he stopped going, so I stopped going, and then I had got a job working at BP Amico in Lithonia, like as an overnight cashier. So as an overnight cashier, I got to see like a lot of people come in, like a lot of celebrities that come in the middle of the night to get gas or whatever. And I'm standing there, doing my job, and this guy comes in and he invites me to a Eastern Star Masonic meeting. He said, "Yeah, they're gonna be having it at Denny's on Memorial Drive tomorrow or Sunday. Swing by or whatever." So I was always kind of leery about those things. So I had prayed to God. I said, "God, if it's meant for me to go, then let me know. And if not, then, let something else come up." As soon as I finished praying that prayer, I look outside at the gas pump because I'm at work. I look outside at the gas pump, and there's this white van, and the pastor's family of the church had a very distinct white van. It was a white conversion van that, like, if you see it, you will know that it's them or whatever. So I'm looking outside, and I see this white van pull up at the gas pump, and I was like, that looks like Pastor such and such van. And he gets out and walks in, and he was like, "Hey," I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" He had said, "You stopped coming to church or whatever. Just because Randall haven't been coming don't mean that you can't come." And I was like, oh, because I guess in my mind, I'm thinking that if I was thinking like, dang, if he don't go, then they probably don't want to see me. I don't know, whatever. But I said, oh, okay, I was just thinking about, and in my mind at the time, I'm thinking that this is a sign from God for me not to go to the Masonic meeting because I had just prayed, hey, if this isn't meant for me to go there, then let something else come up. So I get invited back to this church cult that I didn't know was a cult. This like immediately after. So I'm thinking, okay, this must be what God really wants me to do instead of going to the Masonic meeting. So the following Sunday I go to the meeting and everything was all good. You know, I was just adored. It was just, oh, look who's back and all this other stuff. They gave me a whole new name, called me COB and all of this other stuff, and with love and all this other stuff. So I continued to go, and even though me and Randall were still together, like I didn't bring it up to him. I was just like, if he didn't ask, I didn't bring it up to him because I knew that was sensitive for him or whatever. So I continued going to the church, and Randall was having a very, very, very hard time. He was going through a lot of like emotional stuff. He was depressed. He was, contemplating and everything. So, I prayed him through a lot of stuff, and it was just like where he ended up living. He ended up living in this like rundown hotel, and just stuff was just going really, really bad for him. So I said, well, how about you contact your family and see if you can stay there because they had a really big house. So I was like, won't you stay there until you get on your feet? So he was like, well, maybe I should, whatever. So he ended up calling them back and going. He ended up calling them back and he ended up moving back in. I'm still going to the cult, the church/cult, and then he started back going, whatever. So he ended up, moving back in with the family, and everything was going fine for the first maybe year or so. Everything was going fine. We're all on the same path. He told his parents, his mom, he wanted her to officiate our wedding, and everything was just going good. So around maybe like the end of the first year, I ended up losing my job. So I had a lot of free time on my hands. So the cult leader's, pastor's, whatever, wife said, well, we need a church secretary. So I was like, oh, okay, I've never done clerical before, but I was always interested in doing it. I just never knew how to get into it because I didn't know anything about it. So she was like, well, I'll teach you everything that you need to know and all this other stuff. And to this day, that woman, she taught me a lot. I mean, a lot. I know how to write business plans because of her. I know how to, write letters, memos, and do graphic design. I know how to do a lot of stuff as it pertains to clerical when it comes to clerical work because of her. So I was always grateful for that. So I started working for the church /cult, and my ex Randall started being the sound guy for the coat. So everything was all fine and good, and we're just, going through everything. So I didn't have a car. So I probably lived maybe about 15 minutes from the church, and the pastor and his wife, they live maybe about 5 to 10 minutes from the church. So they were like, well, we'll come pick you up in the morning, drop you off at the church, you do your secretarial duties, and then we'll take you home in the afternoons or whatever. I was like, okay, cool. So I wasn't getting paid to do this. I was just excited because I was learning some stuff. So one day the pastor comes pick me up. He picks me up in this green Benz, and he was like, I want you to come with me somewhere. And I was like, okay. So I get in the car. I ain't even ask no question. We go to a Ford dealership, and he was like, sit in the car, I'll come back and get you, when I'm ready. So I sit in the car for maybe an hour 30 minutes. It took forever. He came back out and he had said, hey, come in, I want you to sign this paper. And I was like, okay, I'm maybe like 20, 21. I'm not really thinking about anything because, he's a pastor. He says he was a prophet. He can hear directly from God, and you don't question everything that he says is like God, whatever. So I didn't ask any questions or whatever when he told me to go in here and sign this paper. So I go in and I sign the paper. Now I know it was a finance manager. I didn't know that then because I never financed anything before. So I go in and I sign this paper, and um, after I signed the paper, he hands me the keys. Some keys. He said, here. And I take the keys. I'm like, what is this? He said, come outside. So we go outside, and there's this orange, burnt orange Ford Focus. Brand new. It's probably like maybe not even a year old. It had 21 miles on it. And he said, well, this is your car. And I was like, my car? He was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, wow, oh my gosh, like, thank you. I've never had a new car before. Like, this is like, so it was like a exhilarating experience. Well, because I was already the church secretary and they financed the car. I didn't know that. I thought he was just giving me the car. I didn't find out there was a car note until maybe like 3 years later. But he's giving me the keys. He said, come over to the house so we can go over some stuff. So I was like, okay. So I take the keys and I go over to the house. And when I go over to the house, him and his wife, they sat me down. They was like, well, now that you have this car, now that we gave you this car, we're going to have your job duties are going to change a little bit. So I was like, okay, understandably so. You just gave me a new car. Like, yeah, what do you need? So it was like, well, in the mornings, we want you to get up, come pick up our children and take them to school. And then after you drop them off at school, then you go back to the church. And then in the afternoon, you pick them up and from school, and then you bring them home. And then you go finish your duties at the church. And I was like, okay. So I didn't have to worry about gas or insurance or anything like that because unbeknownst to me, they were taking care of all of that stuff. So after they had said that, I was like, okay, well, my new job duty started like the next day. I mean, the next Monday. So Monday comes, and I have to get up maybe about 5 o'clock, take their children from Stone Mountain to Dunwoody, drop them off, which is probably like 45 minutes, an hour maybe with traffic, and then drive back to Stone Mountain to where the church was and do my daily church secretarial duties. Then maybe about 3 o'clock, I would leave from the church and then go pick up their kids from Dunwoody and then take them back to Stone Mountain, drop them off. And then if we had service that night, I would end up having to go to service or whatever. So that was my daily routine. So everything was working pretty okay up until maybe, I don't know, the conversation between me and Randall started getting like really heavy. Like, all right, are we gonna get married or what? Because I'm at the church because I'm really, really, really seeking after God. I really wanted to be right. So with me and Randall were doing, I was like, I don't want to be fornicating. I really want to be married because I had got baptized at 16. So I was like, I really want to be married. So we started having this conversation about marriage, like heavy. Well, at the church, unless the pastor gave his approval, you couldn't marry somebody. So his dad would never give him the approval to marry me. Instead, like every time there was a new girl that would come in to the church, like join the church, he would be trying to set him up, set Randall up with the new girl or whatever, and whatever. This went on for like years. So I started suffering like from depression and all of this other stuff because now like I can't marry anybody, but he gets to date all these people. I'm really in love with this guy, and now I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't have asked to meet them or whatever. But anyway, so one of the stipulations with my, I don't want to say contract, but one of the stipulations was I couldn't work anywhere else. I had to be available for them majority of the day. So I couldn't work anywhere else, but I wasn't getting a salary. I wasn't making money. So I lived with my mom, and I was telling them like, hey, like it's stuff that I need, like, you know, sanitary products. I want to get like shampoo, soap, um I want to buy shoes every now and then. I want to buy clothes. So he was like, oh, you know, we'll go buy you some clothes. And they went and bought me a couple of outfits. But I'm like, I still need stuff. Like, I'm a girl. Like, I still need stuff. So they was like, okay, fine. If you don't go find another job, we'll put you on a salary. And I was like, oh, okay. So how much is the salary? Salary was $100 per week. It'll pay you $100 per week, and that'll be something. It's not a lot, but it's something. And don't forget, we're paying your car note. Car note. I thought this, like, y'all gave me this car. I didn't know it was a car note. So now, as a young person, this is like added pressure on me because I'm not. I don't know what a car note is. I don't know how the car note thing works. I don't know how the insurance thing works. Like, all of this stuff is new to me. So they were like, we'll pay you $100 a week. We'll continue paying your car note, and we'll pay your insurance. We'll continue paying the insurance. But you know, your job functions are gonna be what it is. Well, now because you're getting a salary, now your job functions are going to increase. So with the car and the salary, what we need for you to do are now run errands. We need you to pick up members of the church if we need to, and all this other stuff. I'm like, okay. So this started taking up, when I say, I would leave the house at 5 o'clock in the morning and probably would not be home until 10 o'clock at night. That's how much I was up at this church call. And it was like, I couldn't ask any questions. Like whatever they asked of me, I was supposed to do. So this probably went on maybe for about the first 2 or 3 years. In the third year, like I was just like, it's so many other things I want to do. I'm going to need more money in order to do this. And I had been working since I was 14. So it's not like having a job was foreign to me. I was always used to making my own money, spending my own money how I want to spend it, etc. So I had said, well, I'm gonna have to get a job because then I have to pay bills at my mom's house. My mom, she made us pay like, a bill or two here or there just to get us acclimated to paying bills. But I had to pay the water bill and like I think like the gas bill or something like that. So I was like, well, I need to get a job because I have to pay bills. And then off of the $100 I was making per week, I was still expected to tithe and give offerings. So, even though it was just $10, I'm like, if you're only making $100 a week, $10 is a lot. So I was like, I need to get some more money. So I snuck and went and got a part-time job at a store called Linens and Things. Linens and Things back then was like the version of Bed Bath and Beyond, or something like that. They sold towels and home goods and all of that stuff. So as I'm working, somehow or another, the pastor found out that I was working, and that was a whole issue because no one told you to go get a job. You didn't ask for permission to do that. But now, because you went and got this job, which I was only working part-time, so I was only making like $117, $127 per week was what I was bringing home. So out of that $127, because they found out I was making, I had another job. Now, because you went and did that, you have to pay your own car note and you have to pay your own insurance. Well, I was like, okay. And it wasn't like we're going to give you a grace period. It was just like starting from now. But because you still have the car, and you still have to do all of your church functions. You still have to pick people up. Now you have to pay for your own gas. You have to pay for your own insurance. You have to pay for your own car note. You still have to be at church. You still got to pick the kids up. Like, none of that changes, all because you went and got a job. Well, because I wasn't making any money, maybe like a few months later after I started, the car got repoed. I didn't know anything about repos. I didn't know how any of that worked. It's just when they had came and got the car, I was like, well, fine, good with me. I ain't got to pay that car note no more. That means I ain't got to pick nobody up. I have a reason not to go to the church and work or whatever, because I ain't got a ride to get up there now. No. Well, we're gonna go and get this car out for you. That's what they had told me. We're gonna go and get this car out for you, and once we go and get it out for you, I think the first time it got repoed, it was $2,000. When they went and paid the $2,000, got the car out, and something was wrong with it, so they had got it repaired. Got the car repaired, and well, because we went and got this car out, and we got it repaired, now you resume your church duty functions as a secretary. We'll give you the $100 per week, but because we went and paid this, now you need to pay us back. I didn't ask them to go get the car out. They just went and got the car out. But because we went and got the car out, now you're going to have to pay us back. So I was like, okay. In order for me to pay them back, I couldn't pay them back cash. I would have to. They had a church member, a deaconess by the name of Olienka. And Olienka had a daycare. So after I dropped the children off at at the school, I would have to go work for Olienka at the daycare in order to pay off the $2,000 that they paid to get my car out of repo. And so I had to do that for a few months. While still doing my church functions, while still attending church, while still working my part-time job at Lennox and things. And it was just all of these things. So one of the biggest things about being in this cult was basically like they became your whole life. If somebody spoke up against it, then you can't talk to them people. If somebody left the cult, then you can't talk to them. If you wanted to date somebody, you would have to bring them through the cult in order for the pastor to give his approval. If he didn't approve, then you couldn't date them, you couldn't marry them or whatever. So for the first maybe like 4 years that I was there, I didn't date anybody, primarily because I was still in love with Randall. So I wasn't even thinking about dating somebody, but me and him was still kind of messing around, even though he would date other females that would come through the church or whatever. So maybe like on the fourth year, I was there, the car had got repoed again. And I was just like, I don't even want the car. Like, I'm good. I'll go buy my own car. And that way nobody can tell me what to do with my car. So I went and got my own car. I went and got a full-time job. And because I had the full-time job, I was no longer able to work full-time at the church. Well, that didn't stop because now you have to work part-time at the church. So all of your job functions, like none of these things stop. So, it's just you move from full-time to part-time. And instead of us giving you, but when it moved from full-time to part-time, we're no longer going to pay you the $100 a week. As a matter of fact, we ain't going to pay you nothing. So the church had relocated to another location, which was maybe about 5 to 10 minutes away from the original location. So when it had relocated, everybody was expected, to be up there on time and all of this stuff. So we got some more members. I was still like the church secretary. Randall was still like actually, before we had gotten to that last location, we were having church in hotel conference rooms. So every Sunday we would have to, every Sunday, and I think every Wednesday, we would have to meet up at the church conference, I mean, the hotel conference room to have service. So we have to unload all the equipment, set up, break down, and then, do it all over. Well, after we had been doing that maybe for like a year or so, the pastor wanted to have our own building. So he went and found another storefront that was a little bit bigger than the original storefront out in Tucker. So we would have service there. So when we started having service there, it was like the church probably got up to maybe like 50 members. So everything was everything was okay, but it was still like a cultish like mindset. Like I if you wanted to do anything, it was almost like you had to run it through the pastor. If you wanted to buy your house, you had to run it through the pastor. If you wanted to get your own apartment, you had to run it through the pastor. If you wanted to find a new job, you had to run it through the pastor. If you wanted to date somebody, run it through the pastor. If you wanted to get married, leave, go out of town, travel, whatever, you had to run it through these people. And if they said no, then that's just what you couldn't do it. So I kind of like started bucking the system because I wanted my own apartment. I already had me my own car. I had my own job, whatever. So I just went and did it. And of course, I got in trouble for doing that because God didn't tell you to do that. I didn't tell you to do that. Who told you to do that? So whatever. So while we're at this new facility, this new building, we had got some new members that came from out of town or whatever. And one of them, his name was Stephen. And Stephen had joined the church with a group of people from up north. But he was from Atlanta. But when he had joined the church, I thought that he was staying with them. So after service one day, they didn't come to church. So I was like, wait, hey, I'll drop you off. So he gets in the car and we're driving up to an old Pike's Nursery. And he said, you could just drop me off right here. And I was like, where you live at? He was like, no, you just drop me off right here. And I was like, no, where you live at? He was like, man, I live in that truck back there. I said, oh, no, you ain't gonna stay in no truck. I said, listen, I got a 1-bedroom apartment and got no furniture in my living room. I said, but you're welcome to sleep on the living room floor if you want to. I don't have a lot of food, but you're welcome. You use the shower, the bathroom. Like, you ain't gotta be, I'm like, I just don't have nowhere for you to sleep, but you're welcome to stay there. And he was like, cool. I said, yeah. I was like, I ain't gonna charge you nothing. Just, get on your feet or whatever. So because we didn't run it through the pastor, that was a whole nother issue. So after service one day, the pastor had seen me and Steven getting in the car, and my ex, Randall, had came by my apartment. And he had seen Steven there. And he was like, what's Steven doing here? I said, oh, he lives in my living room. So he goes back and tells the pastor. The pastor gets upset, and him and Steven have to have a conversation. So now Steven has to move out of my apartment because nobody told him to live there. You're not married to him. And what is that gonna look like? And I was like, well, nobody else offered to let him live anywhere, so I'm not gonna let him live in the back of a Pike's truck. Like, well, I don't see what the issue is. Well, nobody told you to do that, and so on and so forth. So I got scolded and rebuked in front of everybody. Stephen had to move out, so he found another church member by the name of CJ for Stephen and CJ to get an apartment together and be roommates. So after then, everything just really, really, really started to I could really, really start seeing the manipulation and control. This is probably like years in, but yeah, I could really start seeing the manipulation and control. So maybe like fast forward maybe like a month or so after this, I had to end up moving back home because I ended up losing my apartment because one of the things was it was like these offerings, and if you're not above your tithes, your 10%, we need more because we need a building. We need this. Y'all aren't giving enough, so on and so forth. So it came to you have to give, 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 give. Even if you don't pay your rent, gotta provide. If you don't pay your light bill, gotta provide. You need to sow. So I was giving all of my money. Couldn't pay my rent. Ended up losing my apartment. Had to move back in with my mom. So I'm already going through it because my ex, Randall, at the time, like, he had been, every time a girl came in, the pastor would try and set him up with these new chicks in front of me. So he was dating other females off and on. Meanwhile, he's sneaking to my house saying, "Well, I really want to be with you, and I really want to marry you. It's just like my dad won't give me permission to." So I was like, "Hey, I understand." We go for a group outing, a youth outing one day, and as we're going for a youth outing, we meet up at one of the deacons' house, which is one of my ex's, which is one of Randall's girlfriend's father. So they moved here from St. Thomas. She joined first, and then she brought her family down. They joined, and because his name was Pat, because Deacon Pat did a lot of construction work, and general contractor work. The pastor and the wife needed a lot of work done on their house. They wanted to finish out their basement. Deacon Pat would do it for them, I guess, to little or no cost. So he became their favorite deacon. And his daughter, oh yeah, your daughter and my son would make a great couple. So he gave the approval for my ex and the deacon's daughter to, I guess, be official or whatever. I didn't know any of this because my ex was still coming around talking to me. So we go out on this youth outing, and that was the first time I ever seen him interact with another female. So we go out, we meet up, and him and her, they're just hugging and kissing. And I'm just like, when did this happen? Like, what is this about? So as we're meeting up as all the youth group, we meet up, my ex Randall, he pulls out a big bottle of liquor and he just starts pouring liquor shots for everybody. Now, mind you, only maybe 4 of us are old enough to drink, but it was maybe like 12 of us in the group. So he's pouring liquor shots for everybody. So we were supposed, the plan was we go out to get something to eat and then go to a movie and then we go home. But by the time we get to the restaurant, everybody was drunk. Everybody was drunk. By the time I left the restaurant, I was toe up. So we get into a verbal altercation in the restaurant, and I just start crying. I call my mom and I said, "Mom, can you come pick me up?" She comes to pick me up, and then she takes me to pick up my car, and I drive back to the house. She follows me, and I go in the house, and I just pass out. I lay down and I go to sleep. I don't even remember what happened. I just knew the next day I had to go to service. So um the next day I go to service. I'm hungover. I have on sweatpants, like some stretch pants. I don't even think I took a shower. I don't even know if I brushed my teeth. I know that the alcohol was seeping through my pores. I know that. So after service, we had to have a meeting, and he calls everybody in the room, all of the youth that went out, and said, "Well, someone's parent had came to my house, and had told me that um they were drunk leaving from the youth outing." So all of the other kids was like, "No, I don't know who was drunk. I don't know who was drunk. I don't know one was drinking." And I was like, "Yes, we were. We were all drunk." No, 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 because they didn't want Randall to get in trouble. I said everybody was drinking. Everybody. So the pastor had got really upset with me because it was like, "Oh, so how dare you, tell this and tell that." So we had to have a whole meeting. And then after then it was, "Okay, well, COB, what we're going to do is we're not, we're going to basically like take away your job at the church secretary." And I was the armor bearer, and the inside of I was relieved because I was like, the stress is too much. It was just all too much. So while after all of that, I still had to do some of my job functions, like print out the programs, type up the programs, do the offering envelopes, etc., etc. But slowly they started phasing me out, which I was fine with. So after the meeting about the whole drunk thing, I kind of like really started like distancing myself from everybody. I started distancing myself from everybody. So maybe like within the last year of me being there, I had got pregnant by Randall, and I had an ectopic pregnancy. And one morning I had just woke up. I had a pain in my stomach. I couldn't move. So uh, I ended up going to the hospital, and I couldn't go to do my church function. So I told the pastor I won't be able to come to church. I'm in the hospital. This thing happened. I called Randall. Randall probably came like later in the morning, maybe like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was just like, the doctor said I was pregnant and I had an ectopic pregnancy. I didn't know anything about what that meant. Like, where were you? And come to find out, he was at a homecoming game with the girl that he was dating, which was Deacon Pat's daughter. So I felt the way about that. Like, I was really, really hurt because I was like, dang, I really like I rode for you, and this is the first time that you really have to show up for me, and you at a homecoming game. Okay, so that kind of made me kind of like check out mentally. I was already pretty much all the way already gone. So after that whole thing happened, I healed and I tried to continue on going to the church and all of this stuff. It was just like everything was too much. Like, if I met a guy and I brought him to the church, I used to like street dudes, like hood dudes. So I would bring those. And it was almost like if they weren't easily manipulated, then they weren't there. Like, no, God said no about them. But the pastor always prided himself on being like from the hood, and he was a hood dude. So I'm like, this is right up your alley. You should know exactly how to talk to these type of guys, because they just how you say you used to be. Well, he didn't like that. And every time I would bring somebody, my ex didn't like that, even though he was already dating somebody. But so I think the pastor had found out, like, kind of realized, like, okay, well, she wants to start dating. Well, I couldn't date somebody outside the church. I had to date somebody inside the church. So the pastor had an armor bearer by the name of Robert. And Robert looked like Creflo Dollar. And he was short and stocky, and he just had Creflo Dollar's face. I didn't think too much about him because, A, he had a girlfriend. And then, B, he wasn't my type, so I wasn't really into him. But the pastor said, you and Robert need to get married. And I was like, no, God said Robert is your husband. I was like, who? He was like, you and Robert need to get married. And I was like, he's not my type. And he got a girlfriend. Like, and I love your son. Like, I'm still not over him yet. But he was like, well, you need to, like, that's who you gonna marry and all this other stuff. So I tried to start talking to Robert. Robert ain't feeling me either. So I'm like, well, why would God tell him that I'm supposed to marry Robert and not tell me or Robert that we're supposed to marry each other? Like, that don't even make any sense. So I just stopped trying to date at that point. And after that whole debacle, I kind of like started staying to myself. Every time they would have events and stuff like that, I just wouldn't come. And then I started being talked about from the pulpit, like, oh, she being funny and this and that. And, what type of spirit is this? And it was just like, it was like darts being thrown and thrown and thrown and thrown. And to one day, I had just gotten to the point of just like, God, I said, I know I don't want you to be mad at me. I'm talking to God. I don't want you to be mad at me, but I can't do this. Like, I'm going home crying every day. I don't have money to do anything. I'm up here all the time. I don't have any friends. Like, if you're gonna be upset with me, you just gonna have to be upset with me and forgive me, because I got to get out of this place. So maybe like 6 months to maybe like 3 to 4 months prior to me leaving, I'm having this conversation with God, and I'm really like trying to, like, all right, well, do I write them a letter? Do I let them know? Like, how am I going to do this? But the attacks started getting like more and more and more and more. So it was a few people that had left the church prior, but one of the rules is like, if you leave the church, if that person left the church and you're still in the church, you can't talk to the person that leaves the church. You have to completely cut them off. Completely. So I had like a few friends. The only place I was able to talk to somebody was at the church. So the few friends that I was hanging with, they left the church. So I couldn't talk to them. So I ain't had nobody to talk to. So one day I was just like, you know what? Okay, this is just it. I'm gonna, God, give me a sign. When I asked for that sign, the last day I attended service, the the pastor stood me up in front of the congregation and told me that God told him to tell me in front of these people that God wants me to let you know that you need to leave Randall alone because he doesn't want to marry you. He wants to marry the other girl, and so on and so forth. Now I'm sitting up here looking like God told you to tell me to leave him alone when I know he's the one coming to me, telling me he wants to marry me, but you won't let him. But now you're telling me in front of all of these people that God wants you to tell me to leave him alone. Now you lying on God to me about me. Oh, that's all the stuff. That's all I needed. So I stood there and I'm listening to this man lie on God about me, telling me I won't leave this person alone, even though I've tried to leave this person alone and this person keeps coming to me. Okay. So that when he did that, I knew, all right, this is your opportunity to leave. So after he had said that, I sat down and I started writing out all of the passwords to the computers. I took the keychains off my key ring and I stuffed them all in an envelope, and then I went and put them under my keyboard at my computer. So then he calls me up and says, I want you to come up here and do the benediction. I go up and do the benediction because you don't question him and you just do what you're told. I go up and do the benediction. Then he makes the whole church get up in a line and come up and give me a hug, one by one. My ex Randall was the last one to give me a hug, and he hugged me so tight. We hugged each other so tight and so long. It's almost like he knew that I wouldn't be seen, I wouldn't be back. He knew just as much as I knew that was just the last straw for me. So after I left, I wiped my dust from my hands, I shook the dust from my feet, and then I went home. And I slept. I slept like a baby. This was like on a Thursday night service. So the next service day would be Sunday. And because I still lived with my mom at the time, my mom was so used to me not being there because I would be at church that Sunday morning comes and she leaves and goes to church, and then she comes back and she's like, I was sitting in the den and she walks in the door. She's like, what are you still doing here? I thought you would be at church. I said, I don't go there no more. And I just lay it back down. So I'm anxious throughout the day because I know that this pastor is going to call me. So after service, which is probably like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my phone rings. My phone rings and it's the pastor. Why you didn't come to church? Why you didn't come to church today? I said, I don't go there no more. Oh, you don't go here no more? Oh, you just a job time member and this and this and that. I mean, he tried to read me for a filth. He's calling me all these names and all of this stuff. And I sat there and I was quiet. And after he said all of that, I said, well, if I'm all that now, what was I then? What you mean? When I talked your son out of suicide, what was I then? When I gave up my days to be at your church, opening the doors, doing your secretary work, working for $100 per week. What was I then? If I'm all that now, what was I then? And he was quiet. He was silent. I said, that's what I thought. And I hung up the phone. So it probably took me about 3 years before I even had the thought of going to another church. I went on a whole 2-year sabbatical. And I was like, God, I just want to be me and you. You talk to me how you talk to me, and let me hear your voice how you speak to me, because I don't ever want to experience that again. So years later, more and more people started leaving the cult. And after you leave the cult, they start reaching out to people who left the cult prior, because now they had realized they were also in the cult. So after I left, after they would leave the cult, like people would reach out to me like through Facebook, and I just run into people and they would just tell me the stories of the things that had happened after they left the cult. It was like, well, what happened when you were there? And I would explain the situation. It was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. It was like so many surreal things that happened during the course of me being there, other people being there. Like this one lady, this happened when I was there. Her name was Luz. she went to, her and her family came down from Philadelphia. And one day her mom had got sick. So she said, well, I'm going to go to visit my mom. So the pastor told her, if you go up there, I'm going to tell that man to leave you. I'm going to tell that man to divorce you. And she was like, he ain't going to divorce me. I'm going to see my mom. My mom is sick. If you go up there, I'm telling you, I'm going to tell him to divorce you. She didn't believe it. So she left to go see her mom. When she left, he told the man to divorce her, and he divorced her. After he divorced her, the pastor then tells her that another lady who was there, who liked Luz's husband, her name was Judy. Well, Judy went up to the pastor and told the pastor that God told her that this particular man was her husband. So when he divorces his wife, she would like to marry him. So the pastor had told the dude to divorce his wife. He divorced her, and then you and Judy can now get married. He divorced his wife and married this other woman. Turns out, long story short, the pastor and Judy were having an affair. Found that out later. But it was like a lot of that. It was like a lot of manipulation, a lot of mind control, a lot of power trips. It was just like a lot of different things that had went on in this church. And as small as it was, um, it as small as it was, it never grew past like 50 people. You probably have 50, it would kind of like max out, and then the 50 would dwindle down to like 25, and then like somehow or another more people to come in, and then it'll be back up to 50, and then it would dwindle out again, because one of the things was with the fundraisers. Oh, we need a new building. So they will have all of these different fundraisers to raise money for the building. And then they'll go see the building. Hey, everybody come out and look at the building. And then next thing you know, we don't have a building. What happened to the building? Oh, well, somebody stole the money. And the next building fund. Oh, well, the deal fell through. We need to raise more money because now we need another building to come up with more money to get another building. Then they end up getting sued because they got a loan from one of the other deacons whose name was Minister O'Shea. He had gave them, I think, like $25,000 or something as a down payment, and they didn't pay him back. They end up, like, it was always just like something going on with this place. My mom did not like this place. But for me, it was something different because I had came from a Baptist church, and like from my mom's, my maternal grandmother, it was a Baptist church, and it was like a lot of members. So when I found this church cult, it was like me going from a big classroom to a small classroom. I was like, ooh, I can reach the pastor. I probably get one-on-one attention. I could probably ask questions, and I've always had questions about God and, things like that. People were really nice in the beginning. And another thing was because he called himself a prophet, and I was always fascinated by it because I had never heard that before. I never knew what a prophet was. I never knew like how the whole thing worked. So to meet somebody to say they can hear that like directly from God and what God said, and all of that, it was like very intriguing for me because I was like, wow, like you could really. And then I was young too, so my brain wasn't fully developed. So I was really fascinated by that. So it was almost like when he said something, like God said it, so you don't question it. But one of the things that I would pray was like, God, don't let nobody speak over me that's not from you, and then don't let anybody lay hands on me if it's not of you. Ever since I had prayed that prayer, he was never allowed to speak over me, and I prayed that prayer early on. So when he would have like guest visitors come into the cult, to the church or whatever, and they would speak over me, they would always speak like affirming words, like, like God is proud of you, God loves you, you're going to have this, you're going to have that, and so on and so forth. And in my peripheral, I could see the pastor like sitting, fuming that somebody is actually saying nice words to me about me and saying God said it. But for me, it was like I hadn't, like, nobody had spoken over me in so long. I was just happy to have somebody saying God said anything. I didn't know at that time I had my own relationship with God. Like, I didn't know that I can go to God and God was saying these things directly to me. It was just like reaffirming and reassuring, like, oh dang, God, you ain't forgot about me, and like you do love me, and all this other stuff. But the pastor would just sit off on the side, and he would just be like fuming that somebody would say anything nice about me. So after I left there, it was an eye-opening experience, because I didn't know I was in the cult until after I left. The amount of people, and for a cult, it wasn't it had a cult mindset. Um, like I said, the level of manipulation. And that's like the short version. I'm not even telling the whole detailed in and out version. That's just like the cold version. I mean the short version. Because one of the things too, like when I first met his parents early on, his dad said, I asked my ex Randall, like before I started back going to the church, like what did your parents think about me? And he said, well, my dad said my mom loved you, but my dad said, I could do better. And I was like, you could do better. Like, do he know, like, what we've been through? Like, do he know, like, did you tell him, the stuff that, like, I'm a real one? Did you tell him that? He was like, yeah, but you don't understand. Like, you don't know my pops, because he's this and that and all this other stuff. So when he had invited me back to the church the first time when I met him at the gas station, in my mind, I was like, if he gets to know me as a person, not just the pastoral thing, but if he gets to know me as a person, he would like me. But aesthetically, I don't think I fit the aesthetics that he wanted, because his wife was tall, she had a big butt, she was fair skinned, light skinned, and so was the daughter. So I think that he kind of like wanted to keep that whole thing. I wasn't like that. I was just always me. You know what I mean? So that it took a lot. It took a lot. And that PTSD church hurt, that stuff is so real, because even now I still have PTSD when I go to a church. If I'm at a church longer than 2 hours, or if I see any semblance of whatever, I get anxious. I want to leave. I can't sit still. I start getting, heavy anxiety. I tense up. And a lot of people, well, that's just, a man. You can't let a man. But I'm like, if you go in with you have an undeveloped brain, then you go there with a real, genuine, I want to be close to God, like the maker, the universe creator. I want to tap into that. And then you meet someone and you think you tapped into that, and they use that as manipulation against you. It makes you question everything. Everything. I haven't stopped questioning everything since then, because in my mind, God isn't going to allow you to do these types of things. So when I see people saying God said, especially something I know for a fact is not true, and you're saying God told you to tell me that, I'm not scared of a lot of people, but I'm going to stay away from you. I'm staying away from you, because if you don't lie on God to me about me, yeah, I'm going to stay away from you. Because woe unto him. I don't even play like that. But yeah, I was there maybe for about 5 years, maybe 5 or 6 years. It was a lot more going on in there. It was a lot of like money stealing. It was a lot of men cheating on their wives. It was a lot of backbiting, gossiping, manipulation, all of that type of thing. So anytime somebody tells you, well, if this person leaves, you can't talk to them ever while you're still here. And you better not leave, because if you leave, God is going to get you. That was a lot. It was a lot. So I left, and I've been I've been happier for it. I have had to go through a lot of therapy. I've had to do a lot of spiritual work, a lot of healing on myself. And like I said, it's so much that happened in between that. So much. It was a lot of witchcraft. Like the girl my ex was dating, like she did witchcraft on me. I didn't even know that until like a few years ago. Because in my mind, why you doing witchcraft on me? You already with him. You have him. Why are you performing witchcraft on me when you already have the person that you would have to perform the witchcraft on me to get with? You already with him. Why are you performing witchcraft on me? I didn't even know that until years later. I'm just like, it was so much stuff that happened. Like the whole destiny swapping, like I said, the witchcraft, the money manipulation, the spells you would cast over yourself that they would tell you to say. You can't think of yourself any higher than what they're allowed to think about you. Like if you were, one day I had went and bought some tennis shoes with my $100 check. And I was like, bump that. I want to go buy me a outfit. I went and spent like $30 on some Adidas, some all white Adidas, maybe like $10 on some pants, and maybe like $5 on an Adidas shirt. Went to the hair store, got me some hair, and I was like, I'm just gonna go and get cute. And this was probably like the first outfit that they hadn't given to me. And so when I come to church and I'm dressed, it was like a afternoon service, so I didn't have to dress up, but I just wore my tennis shoes and I'm looking cute. They were looking like, where'd you get that from? I'm like, yeah, I went and bought, so on and so forth. Who told you to buy that? Did you pay your tithes and offerings? Why you buying new outfits? Meanwhile, like the pastor's wife is wearing like $1,500 St. John outfits. He's wearing gator boots, custom made suits, tailor made suits. The son is wearing like name brand this and name brand that. The children are wearing name brand this and name brand that. All of the other females who are there, who are in my age range, they come into work, they come into church, and they're able to wear like, name brand tennis shoes and a new outfit every now and then. But so I was like, I want to look cute too. And then I'm looking at my ex and how he's looking at the other girls, and I was like, well, shoot, I want him to look at me like that again too, but I couldn't because I ain't never had no money, because I couldn't work nowhere. I couldn't pay nothing. Like I couldn't go buy me anything. So when I had took the chance to just spend $100 on myself, that was a whole nother issue. Now we got to have another meeting, because why are you out buying clothes when you need to be paying your tithes and offerings? Like, well, I paid my tithes and offerings. I want to go buy something new for myself. Well, who told you to do that? Nobody told you to do that. You need to pay your tithes and your offerings, and so on and so forth. It was like stuff like that. Stuff like that. And it happened so frequently. You'll be amazed at how many people got chastised for, if you wanted to go, if you were dating somebody at the church, especially, that was one of the biggest things. That was one of the biggest things, because one of the guys that my other friend was dating, he had brought her to the church. So she wanted to marry him. He wanted to marry her. But of course, the pastor wouldn't give permission for them to get married. So he started honing in on her, like targeting her money. Like, what you doing with your money? Like, all right, we need an extra amount of offering, so you need to do this. If you're in the singles ministry, which we didn't have a single ministry, you were just in a singles ministry if you were just there and single. We didn't have meetings and a group or Bible study about being single. Just like singles ministry equals people in the church that are single. That's what the singles ministry is. And if you're in a singles ministry, you need to give X amount of dollars more than what you were supposed to be giving because you're single. So that was, that took a lot. It took a lot out of me. I learned not to listen to other people as it pertains to my relationship with God and who I think God is, and the voice of God that I hear in my relationship. So yeah, that was the time that I had joined the cult. I inadvertently joined the cult. And it's probably more to that story that I'm leaving out, but that's the gist of it. If I guess if you want me to break it down, let me know and I'll break it down. But that was a wild time, man. That was a wild, wild time. It was so many things that happened. So many things. Turns out, let me say this too. It turns out, while I'm battling with this depression that I was going through during my time of being there, uh, I didn't know that the pastor, how he had started the church, was he had got sat down at a previous church. So because he got sat down, he was at a previous church and they had sat him down, which means they had took him off the, you couldn't speak, you couldn't preach or whatever. You had to go sit down until you get yourself together. Well, before he started the cult that we were in, he was at this other church. It was like a Kojic church, and one of the things that he was found in violation of was he was cheating on his then wife with the wife that my ex's mother. So that made the first wife was depressed. They all went to the same church. She was depressed and she ended up unaliving herself. After she unalived herself, the pastor and my ex's mother got married. So during the time that right after they got married, they kind of like got expelled from the church, and then he left and found a new, they call them like father church or parent church or whatever, which so happened to be Creflo Dollar's church. So after he started Creflo Dollar, after he got Creflo Dollar to be his parent church or his father church or whatever they call it, he opened up the church cult that I attended. I didn't know that his first wife unalived herself because she was severely depressed, because the same thing that he was influencing my ex to do, he had already done. So he knew that could have been the outcome for me, because I was depressed just like his first wife was depressed. And seeing him date other women in front of her probably made her even more depressed, which made her unalive herself. And I thought that was so deep, because I was like, well, I was already depressed. I was already suicidal. So I was very vulnerable. And he kind of, I think, understood that or knew that or picked up on it. And he didn't care. So I had to do a lot of healing. It was a lot of different things that had been transpired. I'll probably go into some more details about this later. It's just like all of it, because it was so much across the span of a few years, that you have to kind of like condense it down. But when I left the cult, my mom was extremely happy. I think I've been a better person for it. I haven't let that get into the in the way of my relationship with the universal God that I believe to be God. I think I still have a better relationship, a stronger relationship. I'm very hesitant on churches. So that was the time I joined the cult, unknowingly.